Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Blather 219, the Diamond Age of Stoopid. When historians get busy with our times, the most salient feature will be the height of stupidity reached by the Western countries in the pursuit of an ever more evanescent concept of moral ambiguity. Terrorists murdering the innocent? No different than soldiers defending the innocent. Oppressive societies murdering, jailing, torturing their citizens? No different than free societies upholding the value of individual rights. Political parties seeking to subjugate their populations under mountains of regulations at whatever the cost? Eh, no different than political parties striving to bring liberty to their nations. Religious fanatics? No different than the pious. Equality before the law? Nah. Equality of outcome at the cost of freedom. All's the same in this race to the bottom. This madly stupid effort to undo the progress made by civilization in the past 250 years, sacrificing it in the bonfire of collectivism. To see the young and well to do parading their sorry shells, clad in the symbols of jihadism and oppression, on the very streets where once the World Trade Center cast its shadow, it is as absurd as it is sickening. This won't last. The question is not whether some goat fucking medievalist in Iran will impose their twisted ideology in the world or not. The question is how much damage the marriage of leftism, green bullcrap, and medievalism will cause, and how long will it take to repair the damage. The first step to do is removing the retarded cadre of 1960s nostalgics in Western governments. May 68 and the Weather Underground belong in the cemetery of bad ideas they should have never left. In November, discard stupid. This is Saul Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from Virginia. And right next to me, right over there, and I used the right finger this time, is Thomas Witter, the one and the only expert in World War I flamethrowers. And I should say music and how to spot shit in videos. I could make a list as long as a book, but I'll leave it up to you to figure it out. And all of this said, oh yeah, no, forgot one thing. We're going, as it's been the custom lately, we're doing this at the Quadverum TV channel in Odyssey, and 3 timelines in Twitter, my own, the Bradelai, Quadverum, oddly enough, at Quadverum, and Thomas Wictor's at the Thomas Wictor. The one that I hijacked and he doesn't know it even exists. Now that we have that, we're also doing this in YouTube, but not for long. And to all of you, I say, come on, people. Move your fingers. You don't even have to move your ass. Move your fingers, click on the link, come to Odyssey, join Odyssey either as a subscriber to get notifications when we go on air, or as a member of this channel, God forbid, so that you help us defray the cost of both Social Quadverum and this channel. If you don't want to become a member because you're allergic to that kind of thing or too cheap for, let me see, 1/4 of a latte per week, then you can drop any amount you wish at the support, or click the $ and leave it on the chat, or go to quadverum.com/support us, where you can support both Social Quadverum and this joint here. Right there. See? Easy. And now that I've said that, Thomas, How's life treating you in Californication?
Well, my neighbors put up a permanent bouncy castle for their kids. So um, the
Those
kid,
are your silent neighbors.
my silent neighbors, their kids do their screaming in 3 shifts now, and they seem to not be losing interest in bouncing and screaming. It's pretty amazing if let's say a rabid javelina attacked those kids. I would never know because I would just think that they're just playing because that's what they sound like when they're playing. They sound like they're being attacked by a rabid javelina, and you know, nobody's supervising them. I've seen videos of kids doing terrible things to themselves in bouncy castles. I'm surprised that California hasn't outlawed them yet, but
Oh, give them time. Give
yeah.
them time. If it gives anybody pleasure, they will ban it.
Well, I mean, along those lines, now hourly workers in California are demanding $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Um,
You,
to
you know, they should stop with the penny ante bullshit. Go for $100 an hour. Who gives a shit?
yeah,
Then you're gonna pay $200 for a Big Mac in California, and I in Virginia and Florida won't give a flying crap.
well, the filmmaker David Cronenberg made a short film called um, "The Closing of the Last Movie Theater in the World," and he played a silent part where they were broadcasting live that he was going to commit suicide. He was going to shoot himself. Um, oh, I just said a word that's banned on YouTube.
No.
Um, in the last closing movie theater on Earth, and what's going to happen in California? You're going to have the last McDonald's in the state, and there's going to be a line like 40 miles long, and they will pay $200 each for a Big Mac. And then when that day is over, they're going to shutter it forever. And then all those people getting $25 an hour are going to go, "How did it happen?" And by that time, I'll be long out of the state. So I'll just not care, and I'll just not even think about this period of my life because, as I've said a lot, I started coming here as a sentient person in 1967, and it really was the Golden State back then. And now,
Oh yes, it was.
um, I mean, it's really funny to see dystopian movies that were made in, say, the year 2005, and they show conditions that are actually better than present day California's conditions. It's remarkable. Like 2005, the conditions were like magnificent in comparison to the reality of 2024 in California. But Californians, they like
The
it.
Soviets were better than California.
Yeah, I mean, Californians aren't showing any sign whatsoever of rebelling at the ballot box. So, this is what they want, and that's fine. Bill Maher can stay here, and I can't remember who else was a defiant Californian through and through. And we're going to end up with the ultra rich in two little enclaves in San Francisco, and
Bel-Air.
and then it's going to be this sea of. I read that California now has half of all the country's welfare cases.
Yes, they do. But don't worry, at this rate, in about 5 years, it's going to be 80%.
Unbelievable. I know that we have the majority of the country's homeless, And now we have
Not the majority of the country's homeless, but the largest share of the country. So I think that 25% of the homeless are in California.
it's got to be more than that. It was 30% a few years ago. So, but I mean, again, they'll just build more homes, and government workers will get richer, and the homes will be never occupied, because I mean they're not doing anything. I don't know. It's amazing that I mean the homeless predators are in the majority of like the beach communities, and they interview these people who are now like being held prisoner in their own houses. They're going, oh, I don't know what to do about this. I just don't know.
Well, pretty soon, when you say prisoner in their own houses, it goes even further than that, because if they leave the house to go to the supermarket, they might find somebody else living in it when they return.
Well, some American politician just asked people in their state to open up their homes.
Well, no, several. The idiot governor of Massachusetts, the idiot governor of New York.
Yep.
But the one in Massachusetts actually asked people, if you have a room available in your home, you should open it to a new arrival, so that they have a place to stay. Why don't you go fuck yourself?
No, let her lead by example. Let her lead by example.
Jesus.
No.
They can take 5 of Bernie Sanders' houses.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm generous. I'm letting him keep 1.
But see, I'm not. I mean, I don't feel bad for these people. I don't feel bad for the blue states. This is what they, we're back to the H.L. Mencken's that democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want, deserve to get it good and hard. Well, they voted for something, they're getting it good and hard, and if they choose to continue it, I mean, that's not my problem. The red states are okay, and this coming election is going to be an earthquake, and my brother's worried that they're since they have nothing that's working, they're going to try cheating.
Well, they will.
Pardon me?
Your brother is yet again right. Now, whether they'll succeed or not is a different matter. But of course they'll try cheating. Are you kidding me? They don't know to work the system any other way. I have a few videos for you today in that regard.
Right, but this time around, I mean, okay, Scott Kessler is in charge of a lot of stuff for the Republicans, and he's very good at grassroots. I mean, we're not going to put up with newspapers over the counting room windows and the cops ejecting Republican observers. I mean, it's not going to happen this time around. They're not going to. And Trump himself has said they're not going to steal 2 elections.
Yeah. No, it's true that this time around they're showing a better awareness than they did last time. Last time, I lost my voice telling these morons what was coming, and I was, poor little boy. You need to take some Valium and go home. We have it under control. They didn't.
Trump himself told us what was going to happen. He told us exactly what was going to happen. So but okay, I saw. I didn't. I'm not saying I didn't believe you, but I had to see for my own eyes Nancy Pelosi at Oxford debating much better prepared young.
Yeah. Well, what you're going to see, the video that I got is his intervention, where Pelosi interrupts him a few times.
Yes.
And ends up looking like the crazy fucking witch she is. We're going to be showing that, but we're going to be showing that after we leave YouTube. because every time we show something a new boob, they hit me with a copyright, and it's all bullshit.
Well,
Because this is fair use from here to Timbuktu.
well, I
And
just
I
want to
always win the appeal,
right.
but I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, I just want to say that okay, she was an idiot to attend, but she was also an idiot to try to sell the stupidity that they're selling here. I mean, the opposition wasn't having it, and she had nothing to rebut their rebuttal.
Of course not, because there's nothing to it. I mean, it's only the rabid Democrats, especially the socialist Democrats, who lap this shit up like a cat would cream.
But
Eh,
see,
but it is totally baseless. All of the bullshit about the insurrection on January 6th and why that is not the same as uh, uh, June 2020, they have no argument.
right, I saw the Greg Gutfeld show on Fox, and they always have to have a token liberal on their
Yeah.
panel. And this woman was outright lying, saying that Trump had specifically called for violence. Gutfeld said he didn't call for getting people's faces, and she's like, yes, he did.
No,
Whereas
the opposite is true.
the opposite is true, and so this pathetic lying that they're all doing, that the economy's great, that Trump is a fascist, that just
The inflation was at 9% when Biden was inaugurated. Don't you know that?
I mean, now that Twitter is out of the hands of the Democrats, for the most part, people are they're a lot more aware, and they're I told you that when my New York brother called me in whenever the hell it was, 2019, it was the last time he ever spoke to me. He told me that Trump was the most corrupt person in America, the most corrupt politician in American history. I said, give me an example. There's just a long silence, and then he changed the subject.
Yeah.
And this is what they all do. They make these statements assuming that you're just going to nod, and when you challenge them, they have nothing, and that doesn't work. I mean, Pelosi was warning Europeans that they were in danger of being taken over by populist fascists, whereas in the UK, for example,
Fortunately, her father was already dead.
in the UK, for example, there was a massive illegal rally to hate on Israel, and one British man came out with an Israeli flag, and he was immediately arrested. So,
Yeah, because he was provoking the mob.
yeah, and
They have some really silly laws in England, but
well, they have authoritarian laws. They have oppressive laws. They are not.
always did.
They always did, but
Now think for a second that being right, England is like the second freest country after the U.S.
well, okay.
You want to see what the laws are in France, in Spain, in Germany?
I mean, I know all about them. The French fielded police death squads. This is common knowledge during the De Gaulle years. So the French are used to. I mean, the I know that. Well, it's sort of ironic. Okay, de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America in 1839, and he predicted what was going to happen. He said, as soon as the politicians figure out they can bribe the voters with free stuff, that's going to be the end of democracy, which is, I mean, democracy is far from over in this country.
I think that almost verbatim, the system will work until congressmen discover they can buy the people with the people's money.
Yeah, and this is a guy pointing this out in 1839, and California is I mean, okay, at some point, California is going to have to default on everything. And when they do that, they're going to have like an entirely homeless state. They're going to have like people who didn't save a penny and were living on. I told you once that I met a guy who had 4 government pensions, because in California, if you put in 10 years,
10
you get a
years.
year pension. And
Well,
so,
10 years in the police, 10 years in the fire department, 10 years in City Hall. Now you have 3 full pensions.
yeah, this guy was he was a road worker and a school maintenance guy, and so he had 2 school maintenance pensions and 2 like a Caltrans pension, and then another transportation company pension. I think whatever the bus driving union is, and so he was going to retire. He was in his 50s, and he was going to live like a king in a different state on 4 California pensions. So he was basically making 4 salaries, 4 full salaries, and benefits. So, that level of personal corruption, and gleeful corruption. This is California in a nutshell. This gleeful, stuff your mouth with as much as you can.
Yeah.
And
Well, but that's how the collectivist system works.
yeah,
People who study for 10 years with everything paid,
yeah.
getting grants and assistance and loans, and then they don't have to pay the loans back. Now they lived for 10 years doing absolutely nothing, spending a little over $100,000 a year. And at the end, we all pay for it. They don't.
Well, I love like these old cartoons that they show the enormous capitalist pig who's the size of a building, and they're dumping money in his mouth, and he's crapping out weapons of war or something like that.
I like
The
the idea.
industrial complex, all that.
Can we actually build one?
Say what?
Can we actually build one? I like the idea.
Well, I mean, when it comes to what Trump did was he got the military the highest budget they'd ever had, and that was enough to tide them over for a long time. And we've come up with weapons like the switchblade loitering drone. Nobody knew that even existed. It was designed, tested, and put into production in total secrecy. And there's some people that think that's a bad idea, but I'd rather have my money spent on the military than I would on any kind of on public education or.
You mean you don't want to have your money spent on sanitary napkins for boys' bathrooms in high schools?
Oh, this is the thing. Like this is. Like, you're going to play a video later on about a political figure who can't figure out what's gone wrong for them. Well,
well, he never did figure it out. Let's face it.
He never did figure it out. But see, when you pull stunts like that, when remember the British kid debating Pelosi? He said when he grew up, men had, and then he used a slang term for a penis, and you
Let's
can't
call it a John Thomas.
You can't get more succinct than that. And I had to fill out a what was it?
When I was growing up, adjectives had gender. People had sex.
Well, also that's the.
It is still English grammar today. Gender is a property of words, not people.
Yeah, but that's like the stupidest debate topic out there, because generally, I mean, you don't use pronouns for yourself. You don't say when you're describing your actions, he got up in the morning, or
No,
she.
because I'm not one of those fucking imbeciles who refer to themselves in the third person. No, I'm not.
Well, and those people are demanding that they control how we speak about them when they don't even know we're
Yeah.
speaking about them. And
And that is something nobody's been able to do with me. I will speak however I see fit.
well, with any
I'm still not using ms. Because this all started so long ago. Remember when the feminazis decided that they were neither Mrs. nor Miss, they were ms.
well, I mean, okay, I always use Ms. because I don't know the marital status of whoever I'm addressing, so I don't have a problem with that myself. But in the case of using third person adjectives for someone, they're not even going to know how I refer to them in the third person. So for them demanding that I modify my language, I had to fill out something to do with recently, something to do with a medical situation, and there was 5 choices for gender, and then there was other, and it was like, you know, this is it's not just insane, it's also childish, if there's such a thing as an insane child.
Yeah.
And it's a waste of everybody's time, and it's going to go away. It's not going to be here forever. So
I hope so, because I never took it up and I don't intend to.
no, I mean, it's why they're going to lose the election. And as to cheating, they're going to have to cheat like they've never cheated before in their lives.
They will.
Well,
They
it's not.
will. I'm not in that. You know what it boils down to? Because that's the second thing that you and I know, and we've discussed it before. The only elections that can be changed by cheating are the close ones.
Yeah, this one's not going to be close.
There is no fucking way that somebody can come up with 1.2 million funny ballots to overturn, say, DeSantis' election in Florida. It's not going to happen.
No.
Now, if the election is 40,000, 10,000 away, 700 like it was in 2000, then it's relatively easy for a couple of assholes
Yeah.
and a bunch of Democrat operatives to manufacture a few thousand absentee ballots and tip the scales. That's what they've done in Florida before. That was the specialty of the uh, uh, elections officers in Broward County and in Palm Beach County, both of which were fired for this very freaking reason. That is possible. But if people actually go to vote, if Republicans stop picking single issue bullshit to justify their laziness, then there is uh, uh, no cheat that will succeed.
No. I mean, did you see Trump's rally in New Jersey, for God's sake?
About 100,000 people.
Yeah, in New Jersey.
Yeah,
So
well, in a district he won, probably one of the 2 he won, but nevertheless, 100,000 people in New Jersey. Uh,
yeah.
I don't think, and this is perhaps not a measure of how the election is going to go, because to fill stadiums is one thing, to fill election uh, uh, stations is another. But 100,000 people? Biden couldn't get 20 in a pizza joint when he went to the sheets. It was himself, 2 Secret Service agents, and the employees.
Well, also in 2020, Biden had cachet God knows why, but he was seen as the decent avuncular guy who had 50 years in politics and knew what he was doing and all of that. And Trump was indecent for tweeting or something. And
mean tweets.
Yeah, and this time around, I don't see the energy. I don't see the Democrats rallying the troops enough to steal this election. I just don't, because all the people who are going to be in charge of stealing the election are themselves hurting really bad.
Are the very young people who are rejecting Biden?
Yeah. So
those were the volunteers in Brenda Snipes' rooms manufacturing absentee ballots.
Yeah, and this time around, they're just not going to do it. This time around, okay, among black voters, for example, it's the older voters, and they're not going to be in there changing ballots, like you said. It's the young people, and okay, Charles Barkley claimed to be offended when somebody said that Trump having a mugshot allowed more black voters to identify with him, and he said that if he ever saw a black Trump voter on the street, he'd punch him in the face. And he got so flamed that he started whining about it, and he was being flamed by black people, not white people. So
And by the way, what a fucking imbecile! What a racist thing to say. The notion that black people should vote in a particular way because they're black, oh, come on. Are you the bastard child of a Ku Klux Klan Cyclops?
Well, also, it's, I mean, if black people themselves, and I've seen plenty of videos of young black people saying this, that Trump having a mugshot allows people to identify with him. If they're saying that, who am I to tell them not to say that,
And of course, that we're talking about the people who have spent a couple of decades more, a few decades already, showing their ass with their pants down to their knees in solidarity with our brethren in prison who cannot wear belts.
Oh, I didn't know that they were pantsless, but
you know that thing of the pants down and the underwear exposed?
Yeah.
That was because our black brethren in jail cannot wear belts. So in solidarity, we don't, and we show our asses just like they do. It's one of the stupidest things in the planet. Probably half of the people doing it don't even know this anymore.
Well,
but that's how it started.
If prisons deprive black prisoners of pants, then you would have lawyers lining up around the block to file lawsuits, because I mean basically that's
the belts are weapons too. But the point is that doesn't mean that the prison population is showing their ass. These people did it on purpose. As a tribute, so to speak.
Whatever. I mean,
they're brainless.
I always thought it was funny when the cops would chase these criminals and their pants would fall down around their ankles and trip them up.
Yeah.
They try.
The not wearing belts was a premonition.
Well, see, they're trying the BLM thing again. There was an airman who was shot to death by a cop, and his family and his lawyer presented this fantasy of what happened. They said the cop didn't identify himself and put his finger over the peephole, and so the sheriff's department released a video that showed him identifying himself twice and not even standing in front of the door until the door opened. So that one's gone down the crapper. I can't remember who else. The guy who was in the car who fired on the police, and they shot one of.
They put 56 in him.
Yeah, that was another one that's failed. I mean, we're not going to have another BLM because all the people who were burning buildings in 2020 are now attacking Jewish people.
I was going to say the BLM guys are now wearing a kafia and
Yeah.
bad-mouthing Israel.
Well,
They're otherwise engaged.
I finally heard someone mentioning the fact that young women with exposed midriffs pretending to pray on prayer rugs in order to show their solidarity with Muslims she was talking about how she went to Turkey. And in Turkey, I mean, she's saying you can't even show your elbows. You have to wear like long sleeve shirts and everything if you're going to even visit.
That's not the case in Istanbul.
Well,
in most neighborhoods.
What she said, okay,
Yeah.
and she said that if people like that were pulling this in a Muslim country, it would end very, very quickly.
Well, in Iran, they would be hanging from a crane.
Yeah, I mean, they're cosplaying, they're pretending, they're play acting. And what they don't know, because they're too stupid, is that this is insulting to devout Muslim people. This is very insulting.
It's, I believe it's the Shura of Light that speaks of the need for modesty, to the point that if you meet with an Arab, which you have, you don't look eye to eye. It's defiant. You avert the eyes, you look down. If it is a woman, so much so, you don't look at her face, you look at the ground. And she does the same thing. And that is part of an obligation to be modest, to not be defiant, to not be displaying too much of yourself or observing too much of others. And that's why, it's polite and in accordance to Islam for a woman to not show skin.
Well, there was a liquor store that I used to go to, not to buy liquor, but to buy Diet Coke. And I went in there on 9/11, and the guy behind the counter was a Syrian immigrant, and he was like sweating buckets. And so I went up to him and I said, I realized we've never spoken. And I introduced myself, and he introduced himself. And I said, it's a very, very sad day. And he said, yes, it is. And so after that, I would go in and we would have conversations. And one day, his approximately 10-year-old, totally Americanized daughter was in there. And she was running the store. She was doing the cash register, and she was, he was just sort of sitting off to the side. And the next time I saw him, he was telling me how he was of so many different minds about his daughter. She shouldn't have, he knew she was Americanized, but he wanted her to be more Muslim, and he knew that was wrong because they're in America now. And he was really lonely, and he was saying, there's nobody here I can talk to. I said, I thought there was a big Syrian community where you live. He said, yes, but we have nothing in common. I said, aren't you all from Damascus? He said, yeah, but we're from different quarters in Damascus. And then
different quarters mean different tribes and sometimes different religion.
Yeah. And then eventually he told me that he had a lot of trouble speaking with me because I was older than him, and he felt that he should be deferring to me, not speaking to me as an equal. So finally I realized this guy was way too much trouble, and I stopped going to his store. But because I wasn't going to try and change him, but and
why would you?
No, but it just I mean, cultures, there are some cultures with which we have almost nothing in common. And to play act, to show solidarity by doing a very superficial performance of
condescension is a form of contempt.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Marie Antoinette play acting as a peasant in the purpose-built peasants' village behind the castle, where she and the other elites would put on their clean peasant garb and play act as peasants, and it's I don't know, it's remarkably stupid. And I hear these people lamenting the fact that they're not going to be able to have a graduation ceremony.
No, fuck them.
Yeah, no, and they're crying because they didn't think this was going to happen. It's like,
Because I missed my high school graduation, and now because I'm jacking off in campus and shitting in a bucket, I'm gonna miss my college graduation. Well, screw you. Maybe you shouldn't even get a college graduation. Fuck off and start all over again.
She was worried about her future, and it's like, now you're worried about your future? Just wait.
You thought of that before you became the American Sturmabteilung, you bitch.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't feel sorry for her either. I don't feel sorry for any of these people.
I have nothing but contempt for the morons.
Yeah. And the best news of all is that, as I told you, the Israelis in February knew that at some point Biden was going to cut them off. So they started manufacturing their own munitions and getting munitions wherever they could. So when Biden cut them off, it had no impact. And in fact, as you pointed out, they immediately expanded the Rafah operation. And
yesterday morning, the War Cabinet voted to expand the Rafah operation as they went back to Jamalia, because I've seen so much shitty analysis on this in the past 48 hours. I want to puke. Well, because the Israelis should have realized that you cannot eliminate Hamas, and now they have to go back to Jamalia. Listen. They were forced to sit on their thumbs for a month. They were forced to allow Gazans to move from Khan Yunis and Rafah back to Gaza City and Jabalia before they were ready, because they needed to offer an immediate and credible evacuation of civilians, as if there were civilians in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think there are.
Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad proudly use children as young as 5 as combatants.
As combatants, not as shields.
No.
And of course, when 500,000 people move back, 2,000 Hamas alls join them, and then you have to go back and mop them up. This is going to be, by the way, even after the Rafah operation, even after everything is done, they're going to have to keep doing this for the next 10 years.
Of course. But see, it may not be that long once the Gulf Arabs come in and start showing these cavemen that they don't have to be cavemen. And
mind my words, if the Saudis ever had anything to do with it, after 6 months, they'd be executing these assholes in the public square. There is no cure for the kind of delusional psychopathy of the average Gazan, educated since they were latched onto their mother's teat on irrational hatred for Israel, Jews, and anything that has to do with them.
Well, I mean, I remember the soda company that had to stop hiring Gazans, and as a last-ditch effort, they showed all the Palestinians who worked there. They all spoke English, and they were saying, "These people are my friends. I don't hate them. It's you boycotters, you BDS people are cutting me off. You're cutting me off from my income, and you're cutting me off from my friend." And there were Israelis who said,
but that was what, 20,000 out of 2 million?
Yeah, but see, the point is that given the opportunity, they took it, and I think they'll take it when Arabs show them how it's done.
Provided there isn't a single Hamas hole toting a gun around anywhere in Gaza.
Well, okay, you and I both know that if the Gulf Arabs go in there, the Israelis have said they're going to be the only military force. The Gulf Arabs, with the Israelis' consent, they're going to send in other undercover guys who are going to just kill people and throw them in the ocean. Get rid of their bodies. It's going to happen. When they took Mosul, there were 250 undercover Gulf Arab operatives in there for 6 or 7 months beforehand, and the same thing's going to happen in Gaza. And it's. I mean, I'm not fond of the Palestinians, but I think that there still has to be a lot more people killed. There's no doubt about that. But and who knows how long it's going to take. But I think that once they understand once and for all that they don't really have to be cavemen, I think the majority of them will choose not to be cavemen. There will be, I mean,
they need to spend their 40 years in the desert.
Well, they've already done that.
No. The Palestinians, when I say they have to spend the 40 years in the desert, I mean, they're not ready to join civilized society.
No, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. I'm saying it's a gradual.
It has to be 2 generations. All of the Palestinians currently alive will have to die, pass on, and the whoever is under 2 years old today might be educated in a different way. It's going to take 25 to 50 years to get anything civilized out of these people.
Well, I think you're overstating the issue.
It might.
But
I do believe it. I think it's a question of 2 generations minimum.
Well, see, they're not going to be treated with kid gloves. That's the thing, is that they're going to be under. I mean, just like the mosques in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're under scrutiny. They're under 24-hour surveillance. The same thing is going to happen with the Palestinians. The secret to victory. Okay, the Israelis have already destroyed thousands of tunnels, and they keep finding more. Yes. So the Palestinians have been digging tunnels since what, 94? No,
2004.
2004. And they've spent billions.
I'm sorry.
Billions. So,
yes.
Once the Israelis have destroyed all the tunnels, that's going to be the majority of the battle won, and thousands of Hamas terrorists have surrendered. Sinwar needs to be killed. He needs to be located and killed, and his body needs to be paraded, on TV and all. If he tries to surrender, they should say, "Okay, of course," and don't have it on camera. Say, "Oh, he tried to fight his way out," and
he tripped on a bullet.
Yeah, and so Gaza is going to be different from, say, Iraq, because if they can seal off all the borders, which I think they can, the Egyptians are in no mood
to allow any of these assholes through.
Exactly. I think Gaza has a very good chance of changing quicker than we think. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, and I'm not saying that it's all going to be, it's going to be everyone holding hands and dancing in a circle and singing la 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 la. I mean, there are people who need to be killed, a lot of people, but the Israelis have killed about 20,000 Hamas terrorists.
Yes.
And they estimate that there's maybe 6,000 to 7,000 left. Um, they don't have the tunnels they had before. They keep
They're all holed up in graphite. It's gonna be like fishing in a fucking bathtub.
Well, see, they keep doing what they've done before. Like they fire missiles, and they're using up their last depots.
And giving away their location every time you fire a
I mean,
rocket.
they're
You're telling the Israelis where you are.
these are idiots. Iran has proven that it's a joke. Its vaunted missile article is garbage. Our arsenal is garbage.
Yep.
So, the only issue. I mean, they've bypassed Biden. I'm sure that the Gulf Arabs are doing tons of behind the scenes stuff. And
well, a lot of people are going to jump at this and say, "Oh, how can you say that? You're always talking about." I wonder if any of those assholes figured out that 2 weeks ago, the military aircraft of Jordan, Saudi, and the UAE would take off not to attack but to defend Israel.
yeah, how could anyone predict that 3 years ago? I mean, come on.
It's like, in case you haven't realized it, Saudi and Israel have had a joint security agreement and military cooperation agreements in place for at least 8 years that I have been following it.
Let's see. It started
intelligence sharing for at least since 17. That I know of, could have been earlier.
2006, the Saudis gave Israel vital intelligence to defeat Hezbollah in the 2006 war.
And in 73, Jordan gave Israel vital intelligence that essentially erased the surprise of the Egypt-Syrian invasion. But in the past 5 years, it has become far closer. And, Saudi may not have signed into the Abraham Accords yet. But it is like 3/4 of the way there, and already not only assisting Israel in nominal ways, but like I said, launching planes in the defense of Israel. So fuck all the naysayers, and Israel would not be wise not to avail itself of whatever help they can give. I also have to say that Palestinians hate the Saudis because all that we are saying may be not known to the American public, but it is well known to the Palestinians who consider the Saudis allies of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, this is a losing battle. You've taken on the greatest military power on earth. I mean, as I told you Friday, the United States, in all our glory, could not defeat Hamas in Gaza because as soon as they started wailing about all the civilian casualties, we'd stop. And
we'd probably pay them 20 million each to move to the Côte d'Azur. What we have done in the past of paying indemnization to our enemy, is that even? And we have done it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, see, okay, I remember when there was a TV series called Band of Brothers that Tom Hanks was behind.
Yes.
Called The Pacific. And he went on his junket and he made the extraordinary claim that we went to war against the Japanese simply because they were Japanese and we wanted to exterminate them. And
son of a bitch.
Yeah.
How can anybody be that big a son of a bitch and still breathe?
Well, he's an idiot. He is a man of very, very low intelligence. He's a good speaker. He's a good actor.
He's also a son of a bitch.
Well, sure. And what this guy doesn't understand is that when we were fighting the Germans, we didn't give them any quarter simply because they were fellow white people. We killed Germans just as
How about everybody talks about the internment of Japanese Americans? How about the internment of Germans and Italians, you
well, we're
assholes?
turned too.
What, they got a break? Bullshit. Dozens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Italian Americans and German Americans. How about the German Exclusion Act during World War One,
Exactly. I do in
where a
World.
shitload of Americans of German ancestry changed their surnames so they wouldn't sound German?
Well, also that's when we started calling hamburgers Salisbury steaks because the
Yeah,
term hamburger was what those friggin' krauts. Those
yeah,
no,
it's like the freedom fry shit.
in World War One they called them heinies. So
Yeah,
hey, we didn't offer the Germans any quarter. All you have to do is look at the British Pathé newsreel footage of the Battle of Okinawa. And there was a Japanese officer. We dropped leaflets saying, bring this in Japanese, bring this leaflet to the American lines, and it will give you safe passage. So a wounded Japanese officer approached the lines holding up his piece of paper. He appeared to speak English, and they had to talk to him for 3 hours to get him to surrender. He finally agreed to surrender, and this big strapping Marine came up and he put his arm around the man's shoulder. And the officer looked at him and then put his arm around the other man's shoulder, and they helped him down from the mountain. This happened all over whenever the Japanese were willing to surrender. Um, we fought them to the death if they wouldn't surrender. If they would surrender, we took them prisoner and we treated them no differently from anybody else.
and a
So
shitload better than the Japanese treated their prisoners.
the Japanese were eating Australians who they'd captured. They butchered them and turned them into rations. I mean,
Yep. Like I said, we treated them a shitload. But now, you mean to tell me that in some remote area of the Philippines, the conditions in the prisoner camp where we held Japanese weren't nice? Yeah, but they weren't much worse than the soldiers guarding them because they all happened to be in a fucking shithole.
well, also, I mean, we didn't have a policy of extermination the way the Nazis did and the way the Japanese did.
Mm-hmm.
We were obligated to act under the Geneva Convention, and yeah, there were of course individual cases of the summary execution of prisoners, but it wasn't policy. And
And sometimes it's a need.
well, it's okay. What the Japanese did is they surrendered with a little hand grenade in their pocket.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where you couldn't trust them.
No,
And
listen, when the Israelis have the captured Hamas holes stripped to their underwear and sit in the middle of a square, they do it because they're sick and tired of shitheads surrendering with an explosives vest on them.
well, a few years ago, there were two Palestinian workers, and when you look at their ID cards, you thought, you let these homicidal maniacs into Israel. I mean, and they went nuts with those cartoon meat cleavers, one in each hand. They killed a bunch of people, and then they were shot, and then they were stripped naked and left in the gutter. Guess who complained? All the Palestinians about their dignity. And
What dignity, asshole?
well, I would have. It would have been impossible for me to hold myself back at that point. But they did it to check them. I mean, to make sure they didn't have explosive vests.
Yes.
It's
the little things.
What?
Tell you?
What the hell is that?
This is the invasion of the sound snatchers.
What the hell?
You have something there that just went out of mute.
That is really bizarre. I watched a movie last night called Anon. It was a Netflix movie, and it's about the future, but not that far away because it's totally recognizable. But everybody is required by the government to have a brain chip in their head.
It's the little things
Stop it!
that make the biggest impact.
The thing is hitting your brain chip.
Well, if I were paranoid, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I'd be like, but anyway, in this movie, everybody was identified to the police when they were walking down the street. They would just look at faces and it would say Jim Smith, age 46, stockbroker. And one cop saw a young woman who had no ID. And eventually they checked her and she somehow managed to escape any kind of notice. And what it turned out was that he ended up finally meeting her. They fought and then they didn't fight. And he was trying to convince her, this is for our safety. The government is doing it for our safety.
Always.
Yeah. And she was like, do you feel safe? Because I sure don't. And by the end of the movie, he'd come to see things her way, but he was too weak to break away from the system. He much preferred the observation because it robs you of a certain responsibility to be free, and that's
Being free is not easy. This is something that's why peoples are so easily deprived of their liberty with the illusion of security. Being free is the hardest fucking thing there is. Having the responsibility of a peaceful coexistence in your hands every day requires work.
yeah.
It's like being an American in the truest sense of the word is not easy. You have to work hard every day.
I had originally planned on staying here into my senescence, and now I'm going to move. So I'm
Well, now that you've reached your senescence, you can move.
exactly, and I'm redoing the yard to make it more appealing to like lawn lovers. I'm not going to take out everything that's there, but I'm going to take out some of these pavers I put down, and I'm going to let the lawn grow back and everything. So I had to buy a lawnmower, and I don't know anything about lawnmowers. And first of all, it said locate the manual. There's no manual in there. And eventually, what I had to do is the first thing I had to do is assemble this thing. Well, I had to lift it out of the box, which killed my back. Then I had to assemble it, and then I had to check the oil. And I'd already bought gasoline with a preservative in it, so it won't go bad. And finally, I had to check the oil, and they couldn't find where to check it. I found it, and I ran out of steam. So tomorrow, I'll check to see how much oil it needs, add the oil, add the gas, and start her up. And but I had to do all that for the first time in my life, because in my life, somebody else always did it, whether it was my father or
your brother Tim, I'm sure, can do this in his sleep.
He's devoting the remainder of his life to plants. And I don't like plants. They require a lot of care and nurturing, and I just want to be left alone. I see them as pets.
The last thing you want is for plants to bust your chops too.
Well, we had 6 weeks of rain here, and like every weed seed that had been in the ground since 1900 grew up. So my backyard had like 50 different types of weeds. And I thought about hiring someone, but I realized it would be impossible to have just your average guy mow carefully around all my succulent beds. So I took them all out myself, and it took a week. wiped me out physically, but now I'm back in the swing of things, and so the next thing after I mow the lawn and get everything ready, I have to weed each succulent bed, and some of these weeds are 3 feet tall. So wish me luck, but
Yes. I hope you have knee pads.
yeah, well, I use a little bench. It's this neat little.
But not the same time Kamala Harris uses.
No, I sit on a little bench, and you can flip it over and kneel on it. It's padded on both sides, or you can sit on it. And I usually sit on it, and sometimes I kneel on it. But it's
we have to change subjects because so much sitting on it and kneeling on it, it's beginning to sound like Kamala Harris and Willie Brown, you know.
yeah.
What are you gonna do, Kakala, today? Are you gonna sit on it or kneel?
I can't even imagine that. But I mean, she's still. There's still talk about her replacing him. That's not feasible. They don't want her.
It's not gonna happen anyway. Even if he croaks, they're gonna find a reason to have her resign. Nobody can stand the idea of this non-entity becoming president for even a day.
Did you know that one of his favorite jokes is to just suddenly yell at people, "Don't jump"?
Oh, God. Oh, by the way, hold on just 1 second. We're leaving YouTube. If you're still in YouTube and you haven't come to Odyssey yet, may your hemorrhoids flare up. And now that we have